This is Kimberly Reuter, supply chain expert and business advisor. I got those backwards this time. I guess it doesn't really matter. So today I'm going to talk to you about the category supply chain. This is a supply chain podcast, but I haven't been talking about supply chain a lot recently, mostly because it's been so fun creating new content that got a little bit off track. And also because I've been reconnecting with a lot of people who want to talk about a lot of stuff. So back to supply chain. And we're going to start at the beginning. So where does supply chain begin? This is a conversation I have very regularly. Sometimes at cocktail parties as a point of, conversation, but mostly at companies where they don't know. Or they think that supply chain starts when the container arrives, or when the booking request comes in, or when the booking is made, or when it's customs cleared. I get all these different types of answers, and it kind of depends on who I talk to in general. But the right answer is that supply chain starts, I'm going to be a little funny here, but supply chain starts when the merchant starts to think about buying something. I mean, in theory, that's kind of where we're at. But in the real world, supply chain starts when that PO is cut. Yep. I don't care if that PO isn't going to be executed on for 5 years. If it's a PO that's going to stay open over a 10-year period. If there's a really good chance that PO is going to get canceled. I don't care. Your responsibility in supply chain starts when that PO is cut. I don't care how squishy it is. I don't care how open-ended it is. I don't care how long it is. Supply chain starts when the PO is cut. And this is why it matters. First of all, you have to have the predictive supply chain mindset. And we should probably do a podcast on that because I don't think I talk about that enough. I'm going to write it down because as I've mentioned to everybody, I keep having all these great ideas and then I keep forgetting about them. In fact, I'm going to get myself a fancy little notebook and keep them in the fancy little notebook. I just haven't found the fancy little notebook. I was just in Austria and it would have been a great place to get the fancy little notebook. But back to the subject at hand, when does supply chain start? Supply chain starts at the PO. And this is why. You have to plan. And the more advance notice you have, especially in supply chain, the more likely you are to succeed. Because if you're running a predictive supply chain, which we will get into, you will be looking way down the line at what kind of freight you have coming in. And that is the only way to have successful, 100% successful. When I say successful, I do need to define this. I mean 100% successful. No additional charges, no delays, no excessive exams. That is success. 100% on time. That is a successful supply chain. And it is possible. It is. I know. Nope. Nope. I don't want to hear about it. No. Yes. You can do 100%. You can. It is 100% possible. It is possible. I don't want to hear about it. Nope. Your shit is not that special. Nope. It is possible. If you're out there running a supply chain and your goal is not 100% on time, you're failing. Your goal is 100%. And it is possible. And in order to do that, you have to start managing supply chain at the PO. You need visibility in your supply chain management software. And you need supply chain management software. Excel spreadsheets do not cut it. Period. I don't care about it. I don't want to see it. I don't care how fancy formulas you build, whatever you made it into something else. You put a skin on top and now it looks like a report. No, you need supply chain management software. There's plenty of it out there. There's plenty of cheap stuff out there. Basic visibility software. Most freight forwarders have some sort of software. that you should be able to have access to. So you should be managing your supply chain with software, first of all. Second of all, is the minute that PO is cut, you need it in your visibility tracker. You need to know that it's coming 6 months, 6 years down the road. You need to know that it's out there, because this is what is going to help you plan. It will help you plan everything from capacity on the cargo ship to your broker making the entry, to the trucker picking it up, to it getting into your warehouse, to it getting sold to your customer. It all starts with that PO that is cut by the merchant team or the buying team, however you have it structured, or, by the lady next door who runs your inventory. Whatever it is, you, if you were running supply chain, have to know about it. And that is when you begin managing your supply chain. It is about the visibility and that you know it's coming. This is what happens when you don't start managing supply chain at the PO. I'm going to walk you through the 3 places where most companies start managing supply chain. And I'm going to tell you why those don't work. Number 1 is we don't start managing supply chain until we get a booking request. Yeah, bullshit. And this is why that doesn't work. How do you know how many containers you're expecting next week? How many trucks that you need to line up in 35 days in order to pick all this stuff up at the pier? How does your warehouse know what's going to be arriving in 60 days? How do you know how to prep your marketing team for any sort of program they may want to run when this inventory actually finally lands? Okay. Every single one of those links in the chain is dependent on the date on that PO. But everything comes back to that ship window on that PO, or the dates on the PO, whatever you want to call it, on your PO. Everything hinges on that. And you have the information. You know it's coming. Your company has already made a financial commitment to another company that is mostly legally binding, depending on the circumstances, but there's already a commitment. Business has already taken place. Okay, so companies go, oh, we don't start managing it until booking request. You missed all of this opportunity to line everything up in advance when you start looking at it at booking request. Because typically a booking request, you should be most 14 days out from that cargo exporting. Okay. Sometimes they're 30. I've seen people do 27, try to do 30 days. It gets messy at 30 days. 2 weeks is ideal, but things come and go. So that is why waiting for booking requests does not work. Let's take it just a little bit further downstream, right? We do we don't start managing it until it's exported because of the Incoterms or whatever bullshit excuse they give. Oh, well, it's CIF, so we don't have to mess with it. We don't have to mess with it. We don't care. It's not our responsibility. It's DDP. We don't care. It's not our responsibility until it arrives. Bullshit. You've paid for it. It's your inventory. Your customers are relying on it. You have a whole organization relying on that inventory. You need to be managing it and knowing about it and preparing everybody along the chain to make a successful delivery, receipt, and customer experience. Waiting until it has actually exported, already way behind the ball. The other reason this doesn't work is because once it's exported, you have no control. It's on the water. So you can't refuse it. You can't say no. You can't do anything. It's coming at you now, babe. The other thing we're managing this at PO is documents and customs compliance. We're talking about the ocean freight, mostly the physical movement of goods, but there's also the documents and customs compliance. I tell my clients that cargo does not get exported until you have all of your customs documents for import. Yeah, it stays until you have invoices, packing lists, CPSC, EPA, FPA, FDA, whatever you need. It doesn't export. That is how you run an effective supply chain. That is how you keep control of your supply chain. So if you're not even starting to look at your cargo until it's exported, you've missed the ocean freight opportunity, the control opportunity, and you've also created some customs risk for yourself. And last but not least is we don't care about it until it's customs cleared. Okay, so I get this one most commonly from when the two in supply chain customs compliance and inbound have been split. And I get this one all the time. So the customs compliance team sits over here, for whatever reason. Customs compliance people can be weird. I am a customs compliance person. Sometimes you don't want them around. But anyway, so sometimes the customs compliance team and the inbound team don't speak. They don't work together. They're in totally different departments. And that's where we start to get this. Well, it's not my responsibility until it's customs cleared. Okay. Again, bullshit. You may not, and I'm not saying you have to be responsible for customs clearance. I'm not saying you're responsible for customs clearance. I understand that you are not responsible for customs clearance, but you're still responsible for moving it. You're still responsible for making sure that it gets to a location where it can have a customs exam. You're still responsible for it ultimately to getting to the warehouse, right? So how can you prepare everyone that you got cargo coming and we got trucks lined up and we got warehouse space available, we got warehouse workers, we got our inventories ready, we're ready to start taking orders from customers, all the things that come downstream from customs clearance. How can you prepare all that if you're not even looking at it until it's actually customs cleared? And so here's another thing. When it's customs cleared, if you're doing your job really well, you're customs cleared 7 days out from it arriving. Air freight, I think it's 48 hours. It may have changed now. It's been a minute. So at best, a week before it arrives. At best. Okay. Now, most of the people I talk to, if they're already relying on customs clearance to actually be where they wake up, they're waiting for it to actually arrive because they're probably already arguing, well, it's not technically customs cleared until it's arrived at the port. Again, weak move, weak play. You need to know that it is coming at PO. And here's a great example of a company that had that attitude. I only care after it's customs cleared. And let me tell you this great story. I come in as a consultant, broken supply chain, CEO brings me in, Kim, I don't know what's going on. Please dig it in, find this out, and fix it for me. Thank you. Well, we come across this $30,000, $40,000 demurrage bill. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was between $30,000 and $40,000. I think the last time I saw a bill that, I can't remember if I've ever seen a demurrage bill that high. I really don't. Not for one container. So, of course, I inquire. I'm like, what happened here? Oh, we had a customs exam, is the answer I receive. Okay, come at me again there, dear. You had a customs exam. Yes, we had a customs exam. I don't understand how a customs exam equaled almost $40,000 in demurrage. Please explain further. Well, we couldn't move it off the pier because it had an exam. It wasn't cleared. So customs was backed up, and that's why it sat. And I already explained this to the executive team. I don't understand why you're asking again. Well, sweet cheeks, let me tell you why I'm asking again. Because you could have moved it off of the pier onto a bonded facility where the demurrage would not have topped out at almost $3,000 a day. Oh, well, I didn't know that. And it's not my responsibility until it's customs cleared. The gap between customs cleared and actually arriving at the facility was almost a month. There was a number of things that could have been done to fix this. But because the customs team didn't give a shit until it was customs cleared, and the inbound team didn't give a shit until it's a customs cleared, nobody gave a shit. and it cost the company almost $40,000. Now, I don't blame the little people on this particular one who didn't have the knowledge, but I do blame the executives who were not asking the right questions. I really do. That was a missed opportunity. But this is the example of why you do not wait until it's customs cleared to put your hot little eyes on what is happening in your inbound supply chain. It has to start at PO. So, how do you do this? Because here's the other thing that happens too when I come into companies and I'm like, yo, we got to go into the PO. We got to be hooked up with the PO. And what happens is within the organization, we get a lot of pushback. And people are like, well, why are you in my business now? You're in supply chain. Go back over there. And the answer is no. I need to be in your business, and we're going to be in business together. So how do you start to get in front of this? How do you start to get visibility to your supply chain at PO? First and foremost, you need to go and talk to your merchants. I know. I'm sorry. Yep, you're going to have to do it. One-on-one helps if you do it. That way you don't feel so ganged up on. But go and talk to them. Learn how they plan. Here's the other thing that makes this so much easier. Plug into what exists. Don't go in there marching with all your supply chain hot shit, lingo and some new book you read or some new software you're just going to try. Plug into what already exists because they probably already have buying figured out. If your company's doing pretty well, they probably have buying figured out. Plug into what already exists. Okay? How do you plan? How do you buy? When do you cut POs? How can you cut POs? Where do they go? Can I get access to that information? Can I get a feed that goes into the software that I have? So many supply chain people, when they finally do go and reach out to other organizations, come in hot. And they come in with a I need and you have to and this is mine and you got to give and it ain't going to happen. And that's why we have such bad, shitty little reputations. Okay? So how can you plug into what already exists? You need to be a part of, and mostly a quiet part of, the quarterly planning meetings so that you can listen to what kind of growth may be coming in your direction and how much of that is going to impact your inbound supply chain. Being just a part of those quarterly, monthly planning meetings, annual planning meetings, to hear how the merchant and business organization is thinking about growth. Because if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, let me help you. When they say 30% growth, that means 30% more inbound or thereabouts. Okay? So again, 30% more inbound probably needs 30% more work. If you're really good, it means about 12% more work. If you're really bad, it means about 45% more work. But you need to know. So step 1, how do you get in front of your supply chain? How do you start managing supply chain at PO conception? Plug into the planning process that your merchant teams already have. Plug into the information that already exists. Most supply chain management, supply chain visibility software out there, whether you buy it off the shelf or you use your freight forwarders, starts with the PO. They are used to ingesting a PO feed. That's where you start. Now, if you're getting resistance and this team is like, I don't understand why you're in my shorts. And a lot of times what will happen is that you start asking your merchant organization for more details about inbound. They get anxious because they don't sometimes like to make a lot of commitments, right? They're like, I'm fluid. I'm relying on the customer to tell me what I need to do. I can't possibly predict what I'm going to do in the future. So don't ask me. It's an art, not a science. All right, look, I've heard it all. I've been through all of the drama shows, the puppet show, the dog and pony show, all of them. I've heard it all. All the reasons why a merchant organization can't possibly predict how much inbound cargo we may have. So let me roll it up for y'all. And this is how we do it. Do you have a company growth goal? Most companies have a growth goal. They do it annually. It's kind of like if they're relying on funding, it's how they go get more. If they're publicly traded, it's how they tell people you should buy my stock. Like almost every company, even the worst of them, had a growth goal. Some of them were freaking ridiculous, but they had a growth goal. So start with a growth goal. We have a 30% growth goal next year. Fabulous. It's a wonderful goal. Glad you shared that with me. What is that compromise? How are you planning to grow? Oh, well, we're planning to sell 30% more product. Oh, okay. Okay. That's fabulous. So this 30% more product, is it going to be sourced domestically? Is it going to come international? Oh, all of our stuff comes international. Okay, great. So we're expecting a 30% increase in international purchases. Yeah. Now here is about where the wires start to cross again, because this were logical, right? So in theory, then you could say, okay, then we apply 30% growth to what we did last year, and that would make sense. But there's a huge crucial question that you need to ask here. Is there a material shift in the products that you're going to change or source? And that's because if there is, so let's say you're working with a company that has traditionally done home decor, but suddenly getting into exercise equipment, which is much bigger, less units per container, thus the value of the containers change. So it's just a good point to check in at this juncture. Hey, we're expecting a 30% increase in our volume coming for international. Are we expecting any shifts in value? The answer is no. Then you agree. Our average container value from last year was X, 30% divided by X. We're expecting Z number of increased containers for next year, and we can thus plan for that. It doesn't have to be an exact science. If your product mix is changing, then you want to adjust that average container value so that you don't under or overestimate. So this is the very basic, simple way to walk an organization through how do we better plan our inbound without reinventing the wheel, tearing down the merchant organization, rebuilding your ERP, and taking 2.5 years to get any visibility to what's going on in your supply chain. Because let me tell you, brothers and sisters, I have seen that too. You don't need it. You need a week. You need a conversation. You need some loose numbers. You need a calculator. How much do you plan to grow? How much of that is going to be international inbound? How much is domestic inbound? You can also plan domestic same way. Both apply. So those are the basics. Where does supply chain start? At the PO. And now you know. All right. Talk to you tomorrow.